Hi, and welcome to Sound Sustainability. I'm Nafisa Nazir.
And I'm Leah Horick, and we're EcoReps at Southwestern University.
We created this podcast to help make our campus more sustainable.
And our world, too.
So tune in every other Friday to hear what's happening in sustainability at SU, and to learn what you can do to live a sustainable life.
So many things, guys.
Thanks for listening.
And stay sustainable.
Good morning, Southwestern, and thank you for joining us this morning.
It's October, everyone, and that means it's going to be super cool in the morning and then way too hot in the afternoon.
I know, right?
Texas, and the weather is just cheating.
Yeah, I don't even know how to dress myself in the morning anymore because
Wow.
of the crazy change in temperature.
Yeah.
But anyway, because it's October, all our episodes will be Halloween themed.
Yay, so buckle up and get ready to learn more about the environmental impacts of candy corn than you ever wanted to know. All right, so first up on our Halloween journey here is sustainable death and burial.
Now, you might be thinking, how does sustainability apply to death practices? Well, the American funeral industry is quite wasteful, and there are more eco-friendly alternatives. Actually, Leah knows a fair bit about this, as she has actually written an article about the subject. So, Leah, would you like to tell us more about it?
Oh, it'd be my pleasure. So, burial is not something traditionally thought about by most people, I would assume, especially people our age, because, we don't think about dying. Nobody really wants to think about dying, but everybody should think about it because your life may have a significant environmental impact, but have you thought about how your death has an environmental impact?
That's a good point.
Yeah. So like the traditional funeral in the United States is very resource intensive in cost and in like other resources like land and
Wow.
and time and all these things. So let's just start with cost because that's what most people will go to right away. So according to Jessica Mitford, who wrote kind of like a muckraking book about the death industry in the 90s, the cost of the funeral is the third largest expenditure after a house and a car in the life of an ordinary American family.
Third largest expenditure. That is a lot of money. How much are they paying exactly, and what for?
So today, a full funeral with burial would cost anywhere from $9,000 to $11,000, and potentially more depending on what services you purchase.
That is crazy.
I know, it's insane. Like we spent our whole life saving just to be buried.
Just for a funeral.
Yeah, just to be and like people will go bankrupt for funerals for their loved ones, and it's just so sad.
Oh my God.
And now cremation is cheaper. So like a full cremation with like full funeral services runs from $3,000 to $4,000, and then just like a bare bones cremation, pun intended, would be around $1,000 to $2,000. But that's still a lot.
I know, right?
So yeah, just from the get-go, the cost is exorbitant. But so let's just dive deep a little bit into what that traditional American funeral is. And so in America, if you die today, you are likely to be embalmed. If you're not going to be cremated, at least. You're going to be embalmed. Your family will have to buy a casket, clothing and makeup for a viewing. And then you have to pay for the viewing and to use the funeral home services. You have to pay for a plot in a cemetery and just a bunch of other little things that go into a funeral. Now,
a lot of stuff.
It's a lot.
Can you explain like what embalming is exactly?
Yeah. So not to get too gross, it's just you're replacing the body, your regular bodily fluids with a compound called formaldehyde and some other things that arrest decay for for a while, not forever. Nothing will stop it forever. So it has origins in the Civil War when they used it to preserve bodies of soldiers to ship them back home. And then the chemical companies lobbied for it to become more widespread, and now it's kind of par for the course in American funerals, though it is absolutely not required by law. So don't let anybody tell you that it is. There are like a very, very few rare specific instances where it might be, but for the broad majority of Americans, embalming is not required. The only thing that is required is refrigeration, so just keeping a body cold so it doesn't decompose right away.
I wonder why people like still do it even though it's not required. Like,
I think a lot of people think it is required,
uh-huh.
and that was actually kind of an issue because funeral homes will tell you that it is required by law, so you have to pay for it. Um, and it's just kind of it's become cultural practice in the United States. It's just the norm, but it's absolutely not necessary. And embalming fluid contains a lot of carcinogens, so cancer-causing agents, which may not be dangerous to
Oh,
the deceased because they're dead, but they're definitely dangerous to the embalmer and to anybody that comes in contact.
well, yeah, that's gotta change
Um,
then. Like, we gotta stop doing that.
yeah, or just like it, those substances will, yeah, those substances will definitely leach into the environment given enough time. So moving on from embalming,
Mhm.
definitely not a good idea. It's very expensive. I don't really like to use the word just like chemicals because everybody's like, oh, everything has chemicals in it. It's like, yeah, we're made of chemicals, guys.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
but these are not the desirable chemicals that you want to be putting into your environment.
Right.
So, in addition to embalming fluid, you get a casket. Caskets are made of wood, obviously, or metal. Deforestation from wood, from forestry, or from mining, because they usually have to cut down trees to be able to mine metal. A lot of the times, those that wood or metal is not sustainably sourced. Caskets often have a rubber seal, which is made of oil, petroleum,
Of course.
and it won't break down, obviously.
Yeah.
So cemeteries often require grave liners as well. So it's basically a concrete box for your casket. So it's a box for a box. And then concrete production emits a lot of CO2. And it's just kind of like, why? It's excessive. I mean,
Yeah,
they do it so that
exactly.
the ground doesn't cave in above a grave,
Uh-huh.
but it's so much. So just to give you an idea of how many resources are being sunk into funerals in the United States, the 10 acres of a typical cemetery in the U.S. contain nearly 1,000 tons of steel, 20,000 tons of concrete, and enough wood to build 40 homes.
That is a lot.
Yeah. And on top of that, there are 800,000 gallons of formaldehyde being buried in the United States every year.
Gosh,
And that's a lot.
I know, man.
So, and on top of these kind of peripheral impacts on the ground in a cemetery, you've converted land into basically like a lawn, just a big lawn. So you've
Hmm.
disturbed an ecosystem above the ground and below it because there's a thriving microbial ecosystem below the ground.
Of course.
And now you've introduced all these contaminants that could contaminate the groundwater as well.
Man, it's like a non-existing like cycle.
I know, it just keeps going. And then on top of that, you get mosquitoes in cemeteries because there's a lot of standing water.
Mhm.
So they can breed mosquitoes and then spread diseases. And then if you just like the cherry on top, cut flowers to use in funerals or to put on graves. The cut flower industry in the United States is super unsustainable. A lot of the flowers come from South American hothouses that have intensive pesticide use,
Oh my
including
gosh.
things that are banned in the U.S. like DDT. And they use low-wage workers who are, not given their not paid adequately or not um, protected from the substances they are using.
That's
And then they
tragic, honestly.
Yeah, and then they fly the flowers to the United States, which airplane travel is
Of
a huge
course.
carbon
Yeah.
footprint. Huge.
Gosh. It's just so many parts
And
moving around.
carbon dioxide. Yeah, there are a lot of moving parts to the flower industry, more than you'd think. So buy local flowers.
Yes.
That's the best way to respect your loved ones is to buy
Of
local
course.
flowers.
Of course. They
All
would.
right. So if you don't want to be embalmed and you don't want like a traditional casket burial, you could also be cremated, which is definitely preferable to a traditional burial. But the cremation also comes with its own cons. So
Oh,
cremation consumes 56 kilowatt hours of electricity, which is about the same as driving 600 miles in a car.
oh my God.
And yeah, and it emits particulate matter, CO2, carbon monoxide, dioxins, also mercury from dental implants, um, and just a lot of other polluting substances.
Wow.
Yeah,
Crazy. That's a lot.
and some of those emissions can be mitigated with filters, but they're expensive, and the EPA doesn't actually regulate
What? It doesn't regulate?
Crematoriums, no, they don't, because they're below their thresholds.
Wow.
But like if you take the cumulative impact, it's still undesirable to have mercury being released into the atmosphere, even in small amounts, because mercury is very toxic.
Yeah, I bet.
All right.
Gosh.
So that's pretty much that's a rough overview of just all the things that are bad with our
Yeah.
current funerary system.
Yeah, thank you for that. So like those are all the unsustainable practices, but how do we go about doing it more sustainably? Like what are the alternatives?
Oh, well, there are so many. So if you're starting from a like cemetery standpoint, you can densify existing graveyards. So just bury people closer together. You can stack graves or like move older graves further down over time. So if you've got someone from like 100 years ago buried in a cemetery and you're running out of space, you can move that grave lower, because
Oh,
odds are no one's going to be visiting them,
that's
and then
interesting.
bury someone else above them. And there's also so that's called there's also grave recycling, which is where you bury people for a certain amount of time, and then after they have decomposed, you remove their bones and like give them to the family, and then you reuse the grave for someone else. And there are so many places that do this, like London and Japan, Israel, like lots of, I know Japan is a country, not a city, but there are lots of really crowded places that just don't have cemetery space. And so this is a requirement. They cannot have these huge cemeteries like
Right.
the United
Right.
States. There are some environmental justice implications with this, but we will get into that in a second. So, but outside of the traditional cemetery, the best option, in my opinion, is natural burial, which is just burial of a body unembalmed in a shroud or a biodegradable coffin in a shallow grave, and let them decompose naturally. And it's significantly cheaper and less resource intensive than traditional burial or cremation, because you don't have to like use a bunch of fuel to burn somebody
Yeah.
or pack them full of embalming fluid and then put them in a box, in another box with
Yeah.
plastic, in a in a cemetery that's treated with lots of fertilizer to keep the grass perfect and green, and they have to mow it all the time, and there's a lot of emissions with that.
Horrible.
So yeah. So natural burial emphasizes minimal impact and the rejection of those traditional elements of cemeteries that I just mentioned. And it's also a way to facilitate the acceptance of cemeteries as serving other purposes than just being a place for the dead. Like if
Yeah.
you have a natural burial ground where people are buried in like a forest, then you can kind of it's a green space that you can enjoy without it being like, ooh, we have to be quiet and respect the dead. And I think the best way to respect them is to just like use the land and
Yeah.
enjoy it. Um, and so natural burial can also be kind of supercharged by conservation burial, and that's when you get a conservation easement for a piece of land. And basically it's kind of like how when you discover like archaeological artifacts on a piece of land, it has certain protections. Once a piece of land becomes a graveyard or cemetery, then you can't do as many things on it, like you can't develop on it or things like that. So once you have this conservation easement, you have protected this piece of land for, a long time, at least as long as we have a functioning government.
Yeah.
So, so it can be a great way to conserve land.
Exactly. I agree.
Yeah. And so, and some people are concerned, like, oh, like just having decomposing bodies in the ground, isn't that like unsanitary? Well, actually, no. So if for the nerds out there, a decomposing body gets hot enough to kill any dangerous pathogens in it, and there aren't really that many pathogens in your average person when they die. And there's actually more evidence of contamination of like groundwater of things around cemeteries by embalming fluid and other funerary products than is
Really?
from like pathogens or anything just from a body.
Wow.
So it's definitely preferable on like all the fronts.
I know, right?
um, but if you don't want to if that's not an option, or if it's not something you want, there's also a alternative cremation called alkaline hydrolysis, which is also called aquamation or biocremation or resomnation or bioliquefaction. There's a lot of names. They need to pick one. But what it is, it's basically water cremation. So a body is put into a tank with water and lye, and the water is heated and circulated around the body for I think it's 2 to 3 hours, and the soft tissue is basically the natural decomposition process is basically sped up by the lye, and so you're left with just bones like you would be in a crematorium. And it is about the same cost as a cremation, but it comes with significantly fewer emissions.
Yeah, I bet.
Definitely preferable. And I know some people are like, ew, that's like you're just dissolving a body. What are you, a serial killer? Well, to you, sir, I would say that back like 100 years ago, people thought that cremation was like terrible and like against just all like proper society. Oh my God, you're burning people. How terrible. So culture changes.
Yeah, exactly.
And we're dead. Like once you're dead, like you're dead. Don't you want your body to not harm the earth more?
Yeah,
Like
I know, right?
I don't want mine to. And then we get into the more out there options, like premession, which is freeze drying with liquid nitrogen and then shattering someone, so they decompose faster. I'm not sure if that's actually environmentally helpful or not, but it is out there. And then there are a lot of different like natural burial I guess add-ons. So like there's an artist who has created something called the Infinity Burial Suit, which is just a cloth suit embedded with mushroom spores. And so the deceased is buried in this suit, and the spores sprout mushrooms, and the mushrooms help decompose the body and rid it of toxins that we just accumulate in our lives.
Yeah, I actually seen a few pictures of those suits. They look pretty cool.
Aren't they? They're so cool. Like they look like ninja pajamas.
I know, right? I would love to have that.
I know, that sounds amazing. So yeah, that's my wish. I want to be buried in a mushroom.
I
know. There are also like burial like egg capsules that you can put a person in, and it will like grow a tree. There's all these things. And there's even this thing called the Urban Death Project, which is proposed creating compostoriums in urban centers, which is basically like multi-story human composting facilities, which sounds kind of gross, but it's also
it does.
It's a little, that one's a bit out there. It seems a bit sci-fi, but it's very practical.
Yeah, I guess.
Yeah. I don't know if we're gonna get there anytime soon, but it's an option. So we've talked a lot about like the alternative to burial, and now since our show is taking an environmental justice lens on everything that we talk about, I want to talk about the environmental justice implications of both traditional and natural and green burial. So, green burial has come up as kind of an answer to these like super expensive, super kind of consumerist capitalistic funerals, which yes, definitely that's good, because funerals are super expensive and it drives inequality. Like if you are working a minimum wage job and you've got a lot of people to feed, and you just if you don't have a lot of money, like we said, people will go bankrupt trying to pay for like a dignified send-off for their loved ones. But we just have such twisted ideas of what dignity is in funerals in the United States.
I agree.
But at the same time, like a lot of things that are just kind of what humans have done for thousands of years, green burial is being co-opted a lot by like, hippy dippy people. I mean, I would definitely count myself as hippy dippy. So I'm not innocent here, but it's definitely something to be aware of like who has access to these services. Like green burial is definitely cheaper most of the time, but even then, like if you live in a city, you may not have access to like a place to be sustainably buried, or a lot of places don't have alkaline hydrolysis is not legal in many states, including Texas. Ooh, don't you just love living in Texas, Nafisa? where all the good things are not allowed.
I know,
Uh,
right?
um, so yeah, so in even in death, inequality is there, and so that's just something to be aware of.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
like I mentioned, like the grave recycling and things like that in other countries that are more crowded. There's also a injustice issue there because usually families can pay to rent out graves for longer after like a certain period of time. But if your family can't pay, then they will dig you up. And some
Yeah.
people get to stay in their graves and people don't. So we're seeing this kind of um, polarization of cemeteries along financial lines. And it's like, gosh,
Wow.
it doesn't even stop in death.
I know, right?
But
It's tragic.
yeah. Well, I hope that I've educated y'all on green burial and that everybody can go out and make better choices about their death.
I know, right? Like, I don't think the unsustainability of death practices like gets addressed very much. Um,
No,
yeah,
because we don't like to talk about death,
I know, right?
especially in the United States. Like a lot of when I wrote a paper on this topic a couple of years ago, a lot of what I talked about was just how Americans don't like talking about death, and we've created this huge taboo around
I
death and
know.
dying. And that's I talked about that in a class that I took when I was in Australia. Just like how we've really shifted in the past like century or so to this huge taboo when it's so hurtful, you know.
Yeah,
We'll pay thousands of dollars to not have to deal with death when
I know.
it's not helping us, like it's not like giving us closure, it's not helping our wallets definitely, and it's
No.
not helping our loved ones. Like I know that so many people care about like a proper send off for their loved ones, but I don't really think that buying them a super fancy casket that was made with trees from like the Amazon
Yeah,
is gonna do
exactly.
anything for them or their
I
memory.
know. Like in my opinion, I think it'd be like dishonoring the dead because of how like unjust it has been to the environment, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Well, it's all food for thought. And I have to close, I have one quote from Philip Olson, who's a technology ethicist at Virginia Tech. And he says, if the practices through which people honor the dead adversely affect the living and not yet living, then there is good reason to give careful, critical attention to the consequences of the ways in which the living show reverence for the dead. I think that's basically what you said, Nafisa. Like
Yeah.
we want to have a planet. We want to respect people, but we want to respect ourselves and the people who will come after us.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Outside of Green Burial, we also have some campus sustainability news. Would you like to just tell us what's going on in the coming weeks, Nafisa?
Oh yeah, yeah, of course. At 11:30 a.m., there's going to be a waste team composting 101 webinar that you can access through Zoom.
Mm-hmm.
And that will be just 11:30 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. and it'll be presented by our fellow eco reps who are in the waste team.
Yes, and
So
the link will be on the Southwestern Sustainability website.
yeah, and also the week after that, or the week of October 12th or 16th, will be Campus Sustainability Week. So all of us are involved in making sustainable activities that everybody on campus can participate in. Like I'm on the energy team and we're working on doing an on-campus or around campus power down.
Mm-hmm.
So definitely be looking forward to that. And I'm sure Leah's grounds team, right?
Yes.
What are you all doing?
We are doing a wildflower seed planting. So I'm actually not on campus, but my fellow ground team members will have prepared some wildflower seed bombs. And there is a designated wildflower area outside of Robertson Gym. And so we'll have information on where to pick up your wildflower seed bombs and where to throw them. And hopefully come spring, we'll have a beautiful field of bluebonnets and red poppies and just all the beautiful flowers.
That's beautiful.
I know. It's going to be so nice. And then there's a bunch of other stuff for Campus Sustainability Week. We'll have more webinars. My team is putting on a webinar next
Awesome.
month on native plants. So make sure to go to the Southwestern Sustainability website to check out all of our upcoming events.
Yeah.
And we'll put the link in our on our page as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I think that's it for us today.
Yeah, that's all we got.
All right. Well, thank everybody for listening, and I hope that you have been educated.
Mhm.
And make sure to keep thinking about death and burial. Don't just put it to the back of your mind. It's important, everybody.
Yes, it is.
All right.
All right.
And stay tuned for our next Halloween-themed episode.
Yep, and it will be released on October 16th at 10 a.m.
Yes.
So we'll see you then.
All right, everybody.
Everybody take care.
Have a great weekend.